says, I can see it. It's at the foot of the bed. So I said, what do you see? He goes, it's like a guy with his head tilted. To when I knew two things. Number one, something good. I wasn't crazy. It was external. Number two, something bad. There's a dead thing in the room. So that was just party. At the toga party, it was a huge lobby area, and the walls were basically glass walls. So the light of the strobe light, boom, 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 reflect off the light. Flash was dark outside, light inside, and at one point in time, I looked out the window, and I saw this man. He looked so angry. I mean, angry. He was hunched over, making a grimacing face, dressed as though he escaped from some kind of prison or something like that. But anyway, so my hands are out, and he's taking notes, and the closet door comes unlatched and opens. I'm like, oh no, why is this happening? And I can see it inside the closet starting to form. I'm like, this is crazy. I want to tell Jeff, take the picture and we'll just get out. And so I'm still like this. And now there's a current coming out. There's a strong, freezing cold air current coming out from the closet toward us. And Jeff is looking at the thermometer saying, hey, the temperature's going down like crazy. It went down like 8 degrees in a minute. Meanwhile, I'm like this. That's turned to me. I'm like, so I just yelled, take the picture, Jeff, take the picture.
Welcome back everybody to another episode of Spooky Island Encounters, and this story today is a truly scary one. So this is part one of a two-part series of Chris's story. Now Chris might look familiar, and that's because he was part of a Netflix anthology series called True Hauntings. So if you haven't seen it, go. It's an incredible TV show, shot really well, super atmospheric. Very, very scary. And yeah, the series is an anthology series, so different people's stories over a few different episodes, and Chris had a few episodes centered on his story, and after watching it I was sort of like so inspired by his story, and it was a really creepy one. I thought, I'm going to reach out to him, expected nothing from it. I thought, big hotshot Netflix star, he's never gonna want to come on my show, but yeah, he got in touch, said he'd love to, and we sorted it out, and I'm so happy to share it with you guys who haven't seen his story on Netflix, because it's a really incredible story. And yeah, I'll put a link for his book in the description below. It's called The Ghost Boy of Erie Hall, I believe. It's something around those lines, and I'll put a link for it in the description if you want to read a little bit more about his story, because obviously I can't get into absolutely everything over these episodes, but it's an incredible story, guys. It's so scary, and there's like so many twists and turns, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I'm watching the show on Netflix and then obviously speaking to him. I've got to say, Chris's story is one of like the most fantastical stories I've heard. There's all sorts you want from a story. There's emotion, there's twists and turns, and of course there's ghosts, or a ghost. And one thing that's sort of really stuck with me from hearing Chris's account is the idea of coincidence. And coincidences run through our everyday lives, and when they start to stack up, you have to ask yourself, is there really such a thing as coincidence? The story revolves around Chris when he moves from home to college in a place ironically called Erie Hall in a place called State University of New York, but I'm sort of getting a little bit ahead of myself, and before we sort of get into all that, I asked Chris if he could remember anything from his childhood that really stood out, and as we started to talk about this, is it a case of haunted person syndrome, or if Erie Hall was a haunted location. And this is what he had to say. But before we get into it, please, if you can, if it's your first time here, like, subscribe, drop a comment below. Do you like this sort of format? Have you heard Chris's story before on True Haunting? What do you think of it? Let me know in the comments below, and share it with people who you think might enjoy it. All right, enough of that out of the way. Let's get into Chris's story and a little bit about his childhood encounters.
We had been at a church door, and when he shook my hand, I saw this cloud around his head, like mist. And he started talking in slow motion. How are you? Strangest thing, I get chills. And then it ended, and I went back to my car with my parents, and I said, wasn't that strange how Uncle Johnny was talking in slow motion, and there was a a mist around his head. They looked at me like, okay, too many comic books. And then he died, I thought it was kind of weird.
Wow.
And so I felt that maybe he was trying to tell me something, or someone was, about the cycle of life. And so I asked, I volunteered to be a pallbearer. I wanted to help carry his casket, his coffin, from the hearse to the graveyard, because I felt that that was some kind of signal that he was giving to me. After the haunting came to what I hope to be a conclusion toward the end of the show, my mom was sharing with me some things I didn't know. I'd long since forgotten as a little child. My mother said to me that I would, on occasion, predict things. When I was 4 years old, I was watching television, telly, right? And Saturday morning, and I said to my Mom, Dad got hurt at work. He fell on the steps and ripped his pants. She's like, what are you talking about? What's that? He didn't do that. And then he came home about 7 hours later, and he had ripped his trousers on his knee, and he fell on some steps. So she said, okay. And then she said I would often say things like, oh, Grandma's calling in 5 minutes. And then the phone would ring, and this is before cell phones. We had the corded phones. So with the cord, And so my mom said that early on she sensed that I had some kind of, I don't know if you call it ability or whatever it is, but she didn't want to make a big deal of it because it was different, and she didn't have me talking about it being chastised or castigated. Because back in the 70s and 80s, it was the occult. It wasn't as though it was something that was cool like you have nowadays.
Now, I myself went to university. Obviously, that's what college is in the USA. And yeah, it's a great time to be alive. It's like first time away from home and the parents. You get to sort of do what you want. You're on your own timetable, and meeting friends, drinking, having fun, going out without having to ask somebody. So it's a really great time for expression of freedom, I suppose. And this is sort of how I imagine Chris must have felt. And before we got into the haunting story, he sort of started telling me about the political and sort of cultural feel at the time of his encounters. And yeah, does that play a part in the fact that he wouldn't have been expecting something terrible to happen at college? So yeah, this is sort of what he had to say about that.
And that was a great time. I was so happy. I was healthy. The Olympics had just been held in Los Angeles, and everybody was wearing the little flags. MTV came out just a year or so before, so everyone was talking about TV. The music was great. We had Live Nation there after that. It's just, even politically in our country, the president won out of 50 states, 49 states. All but one state. His opponent won his own state by 1 point. So it just shows you that at that time, unlike today, we're very fractured politically. There seemed to be a sense of just like brotherhood. We were all Americans. We were happy. We were living together. Music was good. Food was good. We didn't quite have issues that surface now.
Now, I know why you're all here. It's time to get into the actual haunting. Now let's set the scene, right? The year is 1984. Chris was a sophomore student and a cross-country athlete on a scholarship, and Chris had no idea that a small dorm room he was about to live in would become the centre of one of America's most disturbing alleged hauntings. What began as strange noises and unsettling experiences soon escalated into terrifying paranormal activity that would sort of follow him around for years to come. As we usually hear with these types of haunting encounters, they start quite quiet and inconspicuous, and Chris's first experience happens at a college toga party, and this is a sign of things to come.
I wasn't looking for anything of the paranormal nature. I didn't think that was going to be possible. So it's hard for me to say when everything actually began, because I might have missed some of it. The first thing I can recall, though, was, and I didn't think it was paranormal, but it turned out to be, was at the toga party. At the toga party, it was a huge lobby area, and the walls were basically glass walls. So the light of the strobe light, boom, 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 reflect off the light, flash. It was dark outside, light inside, and at one point in time, I looked out the window, and I saw this man. He looked so angry. I mean, angry. He was hunched over, making a grimacing face, dressed as though he had escaped from some kind of prison or something like that. It freaked me out. Sitting all by himself under this light in the courtyard. I'm like, that is really weird. And I asked my friend Jeff, and also a young girl named Judy was with us at the point in time, did they see that? And then all of a sudden there was a big crash at the window, and people fooling around by the window, and it was gone. And so I thought, that's just strange. Within about 10, 11 days, I began to hear my voice, my name being called, whispered
Mm.
in my dorm room. And at first I assumed it was a prank. It was a joke. You know, college kids, we joke, we play around, things like that. But I was working on this paper. And so I couldn't be bothered by somebody saying over and over again. So I said, door's open, come on in. It kept happening. Just, hello, come open the door. And so I ran to the door, opened the door, and nobody was there. And at that point in time, I was very fast. I ranked number 2 in the mile for New York State when I ran the race. I was the national ranked cross country runner, did marathon, so no one's faster than me in that building. I thought, okay, somehow they're projecting their voice. Ventriloquism, something, they're doing something. And so I got headphones, I put the headphones on. They're actually my roommate Paul's headphones. I put on his stereo and I began playing music. And unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at the outcome, I heard it talking to me, saying my name in the headphones, which is impossible. There's no way people could have figured I would use that stereo at that moment and rigged it in a way that I would hear them say that. Not possible. So at that point in time, I thought, well, maybe someone put drugs in my food. Maybe there's a gas leak in the room. Maybe I'm overtired. I don't know. But I threw the headphones on the floor. I went to get some food at the dining hall, and that's how it began.
We're about to get into one of the first coincidences of the story, which involves some VIPs, some very important people of the paranormal world. And of course, who else would I be talking about but Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, say sort of what you will about them, but everyone's got their own opinion. But Chris, you can't take away Chris's experience that he had with them. So whatever you might think of them, Chris had a bit of a strange experience with them, shall we say, which we're about to get into. But yeah, around this sort of time, the Warrens were touring around the country, going to different colleges, universities, town halls, that sort of thing, and talking to people about their experiences. And Chris's friend Jeff, who was really into the paranormal, came to him with a proposition that he couldn't refuse.
Jeff was very instrumental in helping to guide me through the early days of the haunting. Unlike myself, Jeff was fascinated by the paranormal. He had watched many TV shows like In Search Of, and That's Incredible, and things like that. And he'd always hoped there was something out there. He never saw anything, but he had hoped to be like, who knows, Yeti, Nessie, aliens. But as he grew older, he realized that maybe there's still fairy tales or folk tales, and so when I came running from my room, yelling and screaming, I saw a ghost. For him, it was almost like a godsend. He'd wanted to see something. And Jeff actually had to persuade me to go to the Warren lecture. I didn't want to go see 2 demonologists talk in a room. I had a date that night, and he convinced me to go. He told me it was free and said, okay, well, so I thought, well, what the heck? I don't believe in this stuff necessarily, but why not go? Maybe it's a good show. And it was fascinating. They had these slides. Those are for people who are very young. They're black and white still images that you project onto a screen of what Ed and Lorraine purported to be famous ghosts. And they were interesting, but who knows again what's actually being photographed. And then they had these things that they called EVPs. I'm like, EVP? Huh. And I guess that was electronic voice phenomena, and they played these sounds, and they were weird, I have to tell you. I don't know, I mean, they could be a goat, who knows, but they did sound off. Out of context, I think they do sound kind of creepy. The one thing that they did share was a photograph that they claimed was a woman in the back seat of her car at a cemetery, and apparently that was her funeral. I thought, ooh, that's kind of freaky. That kind of, shook me a little bit. But for the most part, I tried to keep my distance because Lorraine would constantly say a phrase over and over again. I had a hard time with it. She said, like attracts like. And I'd say, no, it doesn't. Give me 2 magnets and like poles repel. That is not true. But when you talk about people and belief systems and experiences, that does happen. And afterwards, we had a chance to go and say hello and meet them. And Jeff loved that idea. He had so many questions written down to ask them. And when I approached the stage, like everyone else did in this line, when I stepped up and I approached, Lorraine Warren said, I won't shake your hand. And I thought perhaps someone behind me was making a fuss and they was talking to them, but no one was behaving. It was just me. And then she said, this is not the show, I don't want to know my future. I said, what? Ed put his hands on me and then gently tossed me off the stage in front of 200 people. I was humiliated, I was angry, I was embarrassed. I didn't know what I had done, to warrant that type of disrespect. I was livid. And afterwards, they were going to be doing a ghost tour around the college looking for activity. Jeff really wanted to go with these demonologists at the time, they were famous from back then. But instead he opted to go back to the room with me to say, what happened? Did you make a face? I'm like, this is my face. I didn't make a face. All these things. And that's how we began talking about these things. I really felt sad that she, in a sense, rejected me or turned me away. When you meet someone who's notable in any field, you want to at least shake their hand and say hello. When you're tossed away like that, it kind of makes you question yourself, like, is there something wrong with me? The whole experience seems odd. Erie Hall, Ed and Lorraine Warren. I mean, all these things start to think, what? This has to be fictitious. It's almost like Stephen King sat down his typewriter and started typing away, giving me this perfect ghost story. But that's the amazing thing. I can tell you with an open mind and honest heart, I don't want this to happen. I expect it to happen, but it happened nonetheless. And it taught me that even the best made plans can be foiled. You might be looking for a fastball, the curveball comes in, and you got to deal with that, So if nothing else, it only taught me to be prepared for anything.
Now, at this point of the story, I was really feeling for Chris. You've got people in the paranormal world who are like, big names in the paranormal world, and they just dismiss you like that. To me, that'd be like gut-wrenching, like a punch in the heart. It's like these people know their stuff about the paranormal, and you starting to feel like you might be having some experience, and they just turf you away. And I did press him on this a little bit, and I did ask him about it, but he's a very glass half full kind of guy, and this is another coincidence. So at the time he thought, oh my god, what have I done? Was someone else doing something that peed them off? What was it? Well, fast forward about 30 years later, and another coincidental meeting with somebody at an American diner completely changed his thoughts on that night at the college.
Luckily for me, years later, decades later, 27 years after that event, I was at a diner eating, and a woman came up at this event and she said, "You're Chris, right? You're the ghost boy?" I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "My mom loves you." I said, "Oh, that's very nice. Who's your mom?" Lorraine Warren. I'm like, "What?" This is Judy, her daughter, with her husband Tony. I'm like, "Well, that's very nice to say. You must have some other Chris. Let me tell you what happened when you're at your mom and dad." And we laughed, and she said, No. She heard the whole story, because back then they would go on called barnstorming. They go from place to place to place, visiting colleges, and so they would oftentimes be, one college one day, then the following day another college. It just kept moving and moving. Judy didn't like the talk. She didn't like thinking about ghosts. She didn't like her parents. Didn't like that at all. So she would wait in the car typically and do crossword puzzles and word searches and things. And then their parents got back. And she said to me that when her mom got back that night, she said there's this young blonde-haired kid who had the most amazing aura. It was so bright, so vibrant in spirituality that blocked her, that she couldn't read the audience. She couldn't do her gleaning. And they're being paid to perform. And so I stopped the show basically, and they couldn't have that. So I put his hands on me to keep the show going so she could sense things again. That's why she said to me, apparently, "I don't know my future." Like, I would read her instead. Then it all connected together. Like, oh, so in other words, I wasn't bad. I wasn't wrong. She didn't not like me. It's just the fact that whatever I could do or experience interfere with her own senses, which I guess is a compliment. Within 10, 11 days of talking with them, things began to explode all around all of us.
Like Chris stated there, things seemed to spiral after his meeting with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and our story picks up a couple of weeks later when Chris is awoken by his roommate Paul, stating that something was in the room, and if you scare easily, grab yourself a pillow to hide behind, because this is where things really start feeling a lot more intense.
He said, "There's someone in the room." I said, "What?" He goes, "There's someone in the room. Go check it out." I'm like, "What?" And so I went down and I checked, and the door was locked, the closet was closed, the windows were latched, but the the tape recorder went on. I'm like, "That's really weird." So I turned it off, and went back in again. I'm like, "This is crazy." So I unplugged it. And I remember, I'll never forget, he says, I could see it. It's at the foot of the bed. So I said, "What do you see?" He goes, "It's like a guy with his head tilted." To when I knew two things. Number one, something good. I wasn't crazy. It was external.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, something bad. There's a dead thing in the room. And that was just crazy for me to handle. That was February 12th. So imagine that feeling where every night you know that person will stand over you while you're sleeping and watch you and get close to your face and sometimes breathe the breath out of your mouth into it, and you have a frozen face, or you'd feel its fingertips like touch your feet or your legs from under the covers and things like that. So it was horrifying.
Now, this point in the story, things are not going well, but the situation just keeps getting worse and worse. Like they say, usually things get worse before they get better, right? But Chris is barely sleeping. His running has started to take a back seat, and his grades are slowly slipping too. And a big part of this is due to him not being able to sleep properly in his room and being visited sometimes nightly by a super intense apparition. And because of this, Chris finds a unique way of trying to rest during these nighttime hours.
The vending machine was critical because that vending machine in particular had soft drinks in it, Coke, Pop, Pepsi.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep that liquid cool, there was a refrigeration device on a timer. Every 15 minutes it'd go and kick in and cool the drinks down. Just plug it into the wall. And that 15-minute kick on was my alarm clock. I'd wake up. Okay, so far so good. So every 15 minutes I'd wake up to check on things. And that's how I can live my life. And I would go from place to place to place. I'd go from my room to Jeff and Ed's room, to Linda's room, to Beth's room, to the hallway, to the I would try to sleep in different spots almost every single night to give myself time until it found me. And I didn't sleep, honestly, more than 3 hours a night probably until when my father came up almost a month later.
It's insane. Like, would it follow you to rooms? So say you were sleeping in someone else's dorm, it would eventually find you that night?
It would always find me, and it wasn't like I could pace it out or time it. You know, it wasn't like a thing, oh, it's 8 minutes, here he is. Sometimes it'd be 3 hours, sometimes it'd be 4 minutes. It was like almost like purposefully keeping me at an edge where I could not get my bearings. And if you don't sleep properly, and then if you're not passing your classes, you have stress. I'm not running anymore, so I might lose my spot on the team and my college, participation there, and it just adds up, and you get worried, and you can't eat now because you're sick to your stomach, and it just slowly, where I was literally a healthy, nationally ranked athlete. I did figure modeling. I was a model for art classes, the nude art model. I was happy, I was healthy, and this thing was slowly, piece by piece, destroying me, chipping away at everything, and I knew it was a bad thing. People talk about oppression and repression and possession, all these stages of hauntings. I don't think it's that clear, like, oh, this is stage 3. I don't think it's that clear, kind of like chakras. I don't think it's just like red, blue, green, purple. I think they're energy fields. But yes, I think that there are stages you go through where it begins to slowly wear you down, where you can no longer resist. And yes, it would follow me. When I don't want to tip too far ahead, but when the priest blessed the room, I was safe for a while there. Then I began to attack other people, and then it followed me into the library, into the gymnasium, all over the place. So yeah, it's just, when it had to, it moved. And that's scary too. If you have like a haunted object, it's there in that case with the salt around it, with the holy water, and right? But if it's moving, you're not really safe. And I know it sounds almost insane. It sounds incredulous, but any person who has an addiction to something, who's going through depression, who's been traumatized by an event, does think differently. You know, that thing was here 41 years ago. I haven't seen it in 41 years, but I knew, and I know every night I go to sleep that one time it arrived unannounced out of the blue. If it did it one time, that means it probably do it a second time. And so, as odd as that sounds, as illogical as that might seem, that's where you live your life with trauma. And so my grandmother explained to me that if you count to 10, you put some space and time between what happened that made you upset and now, and you realize you're not hurt, no one's coming after you, you're not bleeding, it's okay. I thought, that's an amazing thing. So I began to do that before every large marathon or race, or before every large examination for school, and that became just something I did. And so the first time that I saw the ghost, I tried doing that. Got to 7, I screamed and ran. Couldn't do it all the way. Whenever I tried to interact with this thing, especially toward the end, the last encounter, I did also, I counted to try to kind of separate myself emotionally from the events that are happening, because I don't care what your job is or where you are, if you're a brain surgeon, if you're a pilot, if you're doing a parent, if you lose control of your emotions, you can't function properly. I don't want my airline pilot or my surgeon losing control and having a breakdown, right? And stay calm, keep your emotions in check. And so that was my way of keeping emotions in check, because if you lose control, you're helpless. If you maintain control, you have a chance to overcome whatever obstacle you're going to face.
With all this happening in the dorm room, Chris's roommate Paul decides that he just cannot live in this state of fear much longer. And after arriving back to Erie Hall after some time at home, Chris finds that he's got himself a new roommate.
Yeah, I get nervous thinking about it now. Safety in numbers, I always like that idea, you know? Whether it's scrimmage or it's, you know, in warfare, I think safety in numbers is helpful. Yeah, I didn't know he was going to leave. He didn't really say much other than, things are kind of crazy around here. I'm like, yeah, they sure are, you know, kind of thing. You know, he had the luxury, good fortune of living less than an hour from the college campus. So when these things started to happen, he began to go home almost every weekend, all the time. So I'd only see him for like 4 days a week usually. I knew that he was getting away. I didn't blame him for that. But then I remember I went home one time in late March during the haunting once, and I came back, and Jeff, who lived next door, had his bed sheets at the bottom of Paul's bed, and he was bringing his boxes of his books in and all his belongings into the room, and Paul's stuff is gone. And Jeff said, I suppose you're wondering what's going on here. I'm like, yes, I am. Well, Paul and I felt it's best for everybody if we switch rooms. So Paul will be with Ed next door, and I'll be with you here.
Got ya.
What? Now, there's no question it's the best move to make. Paul was, like, I was barely surviving. Jeff was fascinated by all of this, and he was much more involved and a better resource and support. So it was logical, it made good sense. But again, there's two parts of being a person. There's the logic, and then there's humanity, the feelings of that. Paul was my friend. We were like tight buddies. I didn't even have the opportunity to even say goodbye. They didn't allow me the choice of saying yes or no to the person I live with, which I thought was a very huge thing. But I realized in thinking about it, trying to be honest with myself, I will then accept this victim label if it means we'll be safer.
Now, we're coming up towards the final crescendo of this first part of the story, and it's insane. We've got some potential footage from a camera where they took a potential ghost photo, so stick around for that in just a second. But yeah, this part of the story really is where it really starts to pick up, and Chris's friend Jeff talks Chris into trying to capture some real hard evidence of this spirit or ghost that they had seen and felt in their room. And with a film camera in their hand, they set up in the bedroom to try and speak to whatever this entity was. They even came up with a name for him, and this is yet another coincidence in the story. And Jeff had an idea for Chris to hold out his hands, hold them out, and invite the entity to come forward. And listening to this firsthand from Chris gave me fucking chills, to say the least.
So he asked me to go into the room, and he wanted me to put my hands out, almost like to call the spirit. He had me face the closet area where sometimes it would be in there, and like shake the closet door and things like that. And I had to kneel on the ground. I'm like, this is dumb. Just like in the show, this is just stupid. They had seen it on some TV show, I suppose, and he brought with him a fish tank thermometer, which floats in the water, but he just left out on the air to record the temperature drops in the room. He had his camera with him, a Minolta 35mm camera. He had with him a notebook and pencils. But I mean, he was like the penalty investigator for those things were popular. Just like, gotta give him credit. People I thought at the time, this guy's kind of weird. Now he's brilliant guy. So as I'm doing this, he said, well, you know, call the ghost. I'm like, I don't know how to call a ghost. What are you talking about, call the ghost? Well, what? Give it a name. I'm like, I don't know its name. I'll pick one. So I picked Tommy. And I picked Tommy because that was the name of my parakeet. And a parakeet was kind of a kid. And I had an Uncle Tom, or just whatever. What astounded him was that he asked Paul, and I don't know the other person he asked, or 3 people he asked whether we'd call the ghost. And we all said Tommy. Someone said because of Tommy, can you hear me? I think it's at the Who or something like that. Someone said Tommy Knockers. I don't know. So we all said Tommy independently for different reasons. He said that ghost has to be called Tommy then, because if we're all saying that. But I wouldn't say his name, I'd say T. So if I said the word Tommy, I might put him, so I'd say T. So or that time period, I think, where's T? How is T? I didn't want to dare invoke him. But anyway, so my hands are out, and he's taking notes, and the closet door comes unlatched and opens. I'm like, oh no, why is this happening? And I can see it inside the closet starting to form. I'm like, this is crazy. I want to tell Jeff, take the picture, and we'll just get out. And so
Yeah.
I'm still like this. Now there's a current coming out. There's a strong, freezing cold air current coming out from the closet toward us. And Jeff is looking at the thermometer saying, hey, the temperature's going down like crazy. It went down like 8 degrees in a minute. Meanwhile, I'm like this. That's turned to me. I'm like, so I just yelled, take the picture, Jeff, take the picture. Now, I was hoping he'd take a picture of the ghost. He didn't see it. He saw me with my shirt blowing back, like, whoa, what the heck, right? And so, take a picture of me. But that's the cool picture like this. It became like iconic for the show, you see? And that's how that happened. And then the flash or something must have triggered the ghost or scared it or made it angry because it came right from that closet door through me. It went right through my body. And I felt like there was ice water in my veins. Crazy feeling. And then out. I just fell on the ground. I'm like, oh my God, I'm out of here. I'm so done. I'm going back home. I'm quitting college. I'm done. I stood up. I could see it above my bed, my pillow where I sleep. I'm like, ew. It's like right there, Jeff. Where? Jeff, the dead thing in my bed is the ghost. I don't see it. Jeff, the dead thing is, look, that's the ghost. Take his picture. He goes, I don't see it. I'm like, how could you not see? He's right there. So Jeff,
take it.
Once again, being brilliant, said, if you can see it, you take my camera, you get the picture. So I picked the camera for the very first time. I had this big old camera, you know, and like I clicked the button and I gave the camera and I ran out of the room. And that's the photograph that when it developed, it showed the skeletal image of the ghost right above my pillow where I had pointed. And Jeff was amazed by that for two reasons. Number one, where I pointed until I saw something, there was something there. And then when he analyzed with some medical source the skeleton itself, the bones, it matched almost bone for a human male skeleton that had been turned facing away. So he's like, oh my God, this is incredible. So that photograph was what really made this haunting take off in terms of notoriety, in terms of people calling me the ghost boy. I wanted to burn it. I said, just burn that thing, please. I don't want to see it ever again. Luckily, he didn't burn it. But again, I don't. If you're involved in some kind of brutal relationship or situation, you don't always want to see reminders of it. I was very fortunate to have made good friends when it most mattered. And I wondered how come, like, why was I so lucky to have such good friends? And I guess it kind of life balances out, you know, things are so bad around me. I guess you kind of have to have good friends around you. But I also think probably it's because I tried always. My grandma said to be a good person. I tried to be honest. I tried to be kind, and I think maybe people liked the fact that I was just good to them. And I think that I didn't do it to get things back, but it's nice to know that if you put things out into the world that are good, sometimes it comes back to you, and it's very gratifying. And I'm probably here talking to you today simply because my friends were there around me back then.
Yeah, exactly. So I find the stories littered with coincidences as well. Like even just talking to you, picking up on things like you just said that. Well, that's what Lorraine said to you back in the day. Yeah. You get out, what you put in. It's like all these. It's littered, and obviously we'll get into it shortly about possibly finding out who it was. Again, that's another huge coincidence.
Now, I know things were just getting good, right? And that's where I'm going to cut this episode because there is so much that happened in the story that I had to do it over 2 episodes. And next week, the second part will be out, and there'll be no filler at the start talking about the history, talking about Chris himself or what he's been through in his childhood. We're jumping straight in to the rest of his experiences and encounters, picking right up where we left off here. So trust me, things get crazy. It gets to a point where something, is it Tommy, begins to get physical, not only with Chris, but with the people around him too. So it's a crazy one. But what do you think about that ghost photo? And what do you think about Chris's story so far? Let me know in the comments below how you feel. And have you watched the Netflix show True Haunting? Again, let me know. Like, subscribe, all of that stuff. And I'm going to treat you to a little sneak peek of next week's episode where things really begin to kick off.
It's basically asking God to protect me and one of his children and to, bless us in the room. And I remember him saying to me, this is no exorcism. You're not possessed. This is a blessing. And the idea of a blessing is you bless the room and say to the spirit, you're not welcome here. You need to find some other place to rest. So we wound the tape, we put play, and then first it was just nothing. It's fine. Then after about 7-8 minutes, I heard it. help me, please. I'm like, oh my God. She was unconscious, lying there with her mouth hanging open like this. And once we saw her breathing, then we said, okay, well, just, if we wake her up, we're good. If we can't, call the ambulance. I said, Beth, are you okay? And she said, she woke up like, oh, where is it? I'm like, where's what? She goes, the ghost. And she said to me that she kept hearing this thing call my name and she started throwing things to get rid of it. And she passed out. I was just a young kid who wants to strike back at the world and this horrible thing ruined my life and hurt people really badly. But the fact of the matter is, when I saw its face and I think those are the saddest eyes I've ever seen in my life. Off and then bang, it felt like I was stabbed with a knife. I went flying forward, my face hit the side of the tiles. I could taste the cleanser they used to clean the tiles with, old bitter. My teeth were broken. And I turned to fight. If someone's hitting me, I'm gonna fight. Crazy. And I remember seeing in the bathroom mirror on my back, there were these 3 scratches. Not like a knife wound or anything like that, but just scratches.